Call to order.
Mr. Painter.
Here.
Dr. Painter.
Yes.
Mr. Goodwin.
Yes.
Mr. Lanfear.
Yes.
Mrs. Sullivan Smith.
Yes.
Mr. Freeman.
Yes.
All present.
We have a moment of silence. Thank you. Would you lead? I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Slower than I'm used to. I keep hitting my knee on this. Just ignore me. But, yeah, I normally have a different setup.
do you have a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
So move. Second.
Motion and a second to approve the agenda as presented.
Dr. Painter.
Yes.
Mr. Goodwin.
Yes.
Mr. Lanfear.
Yes.
Mrs. Sullivan Smith.
Yes.
Mr. Painter.
Yes.
Mr. Breeden.
Yes. And we're on with the discussion of fiscal year 2022 school board budget. Dr. Gonzalez.
All right, well, tonight we come to you with a little bit more detail about our state findings and what we know financially what we're going to get. And I turn the time now over to Ms. Patty Secret.
Good evening, board members. I do have a presentation for you all. I'm not sure if we can get that up on the screen. And what I am going to be sharing with you tonight is just some highlights from the General Assembly, as well as some estimated revenue and expenditures, and then going over the priority list that you guys have already seen, with the addition of some things that we have discussed in previous meetings that we need to have a consensus on this evening in order for me to be able to have a final budget for you all to adopt on the 22nd, because it takes a little time. I have to update the system, and do some of those sorts of things. So, I'm not. Okay, you got it?
It's a PDF. Well, it's a
Okay.
PDF. It's a
Okay.
PDF.
That's fine. Okay. Alrighty. So highlights from the General Assembly. We just received this update last night from the state, because as you all know, Monday night we didn't have anything, so we didn't receive it till yesterday evening. We do have an update in sales tax estimates that increased our sales tax revenue, but then it does decrease our basic aid as well as the funding for enrollment loss. They do have in there the state share have a 5% salary increase that would be effective July 1 of this summer. Divisions that would be giving less than 5% will receive a prorated funding amount, and divisions must certify and must give a minimum of 2%, or then they would not receive any of that funding. Okay. Next slide. You all saw this slide on Monday night. It does just have an additional row there at the bottom with the final General Assembly budget. And you can see the differences there from the House, which should have said House. We had to update that. Senate, and then the final budget there, okay, with the state operating funds and how that is also different from the governor's original budget. All right, here you go. This sheet that we gave you earlier, you've seen this sheet also as well prior to tonight. It has just been updated with the revenue and expenditures. And what I'm going to do, I'm actually going to start at the bottom of the sheet with the expenditures. And this is just a reminder. This sheet was just a one-page, kind of like a cheat sheet, that went over the increases of last year's budget to this year's proposed. So if you look at the expenditures there, you can see the things that we had already discussed, the recommended priorities, the ESSER funds, federal funds, and then we had some reallocations and savings. The new things there are what is in red. These are some of the things that we had talked about in previous sessions, like adding the Lexia for LMS, the possibility of a director of accountability, reading specialists, and then the update salary increase to 5%. This proposed budget already does have the 2% in there, so we would actually just have to update it with a 3% in order to equal that. You can see then there the increase in expenditures over last year. If you go up to the top, to the revenue, we just have everything broken down by federal, state, and local that we've talked about before. We do have the additional state funds there that you can see. And that then means we would have to need additional money from the locality. And you can see over to the right, that takes our estimated total local request to over $1 million that we would be asking for this year. With that being said, are there any questions on that so far? It's pretty basic. There wasn't a lot of things that we had talked about potentially adding or taking out at that point. So what we do need to decide, sorry, I'm done pushing the button in here. This evening are these priorities. You guys can see on the screen or on your handouts, the items in red would be the additional things that we have discussed prior to this evening that we had wanted to add in addition to the superintendent's recommended priorities. So I just need to know if we're going to have a consensus or what discussion we would like to have about any of these. If you need any clarification, what we would like to, yes, so.
With the 5% raise, is that all teachers and staff or just SOQ?
So the state share is just SOQ funded. Yes, ma'am. So it is about, so that slide. The state share is 723, 764. So 700, yeah. So, and the cost for us is over $1 million to do that because the state share is only about 53% of what we would need in order to provide that, because obviously SOQ positions are not all of our employees. Even if you...
I'm just asking, do people in the system understand that raise is just for SOQ?
This raise that we are proposing is for everyone.
Oh, it's okay.
Yes, what we're proposing is for everyone.
Okay.
What the state share provides is not for everyone.
So we're making that
State share.
We would make up the difference from the locality
I
if
gotcha.
provided, approved from them.
But we're including it in our recommendation in this number already.
Yes, ma'am.
We don't want some to get it and the others not to get it.
I understand.
So the state share is a little over 400,000. Is that right? You said 53%.
Yeah, so the state share is $723,764.
Okay.
Cost with benefits is about 1.3 million for us to have 5% for all employees.
What are other school systems doing? You guys have a feel for that? With the 5%?
It's we don't right now, to be honest, and that's
Sure.
kind of up in the air.
I saw Augusta, I just saw Augusta's it's 4%, others are doing 5%, but Augusta in this locality, I haven't seen what the other ones are doing yet, because everyone's just getting to this point, because we all just found out this information last night, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, the question that I have that we've already talked about and Mr. Painter brought up in communication with you as well. But what I want to look at, and I know we're going to look at it March the 22nd, is putting people on a step by getting their raise. So we have to know what that step increase is to be able to know how it moves people up a step.
That's gonna be a little bit different. That's gonna take some work. And unfortunately, we've frozen steps so often now, steps don't equate to jack around here anymore. So when people have gotten raises, they've just gotten raises and everything's just been adjusted accordingly. It's not based on the percentage differences by length of term. That's gonna take a major overhaul. Not saying we don't do it. I'm just saying that's what it's gonna take to get there because we've been doing this. But let me circle back around just a minute, Rob, to your point. Even though whatever school divisions are saying they're doing now, remember it's a 5% average over the biennium. So if they gave any sort of raise last year, let's say, I guess they gave 1 and now they're giving 4, there's their 5. We didn't give anything last year.
I see.
So we gotta be careful of what
Over
we're
2 years.
hearing in the public, right? It's depending on what they
Gotcha.
gave last year.
That's fair.
But back to Mr. Regent's point then, so because the scales are not equal and the percentages between them are not equal, and they certainly don't apply the same methodology across the scales, it would definitely take a lot of work. So what we're proposing then tonight is we as a board, you all need to decide, are we giving the 5%, yay or nay? And then depending on what the Board of Supervisors gives us, then we go back and we look at pay scales, and then we decide how to apply it, because we can't approve pay scales until after we have an approved budget.
Correct.
So I would say yes, we need to dig in it, but not quite yet. And even then, we need to see what the board's going to give us so we know what we're doing and how we're going to apply it. But that's basically been our problem in Page. We just haven't kept the raises consistently to increase it consistently. So it just kind of everybody gets it. You kind of start all over at zero again. You know, you make sure they have it and you apply it up, and there you go.
So that analysis wasn't done by Ms. Beam?
That was a different analysis. That analysis was converting us to the bands and getting us off the steps. Yes, that's what Mr. Pena is referring to. And that's something to look at, but it costs us money to do that as well, because you got some people who extend the band. But so did the school system that presented it to us. They had to kind of tell those 3 or 4 people that you're never going up any higher, you've maxed out. And that's the trade-off. If you adopt that, you've got to cut losses with a few salaries. But again, that's just something the board has to decide which methodology they want to use.
Gotcha. Okay.
But we're gonna have that information, or he can't have it, because he's the only one on the board that didn't see it last year.
Right, yes, we're gonna revisit it again. It's just I wanna make sure we don't get too far in making the new salary scales until the board approves it, because we adjust pay scales after we have an approved budget, after we know how much we're getting from the Board of Supervisors. Because unfortunately, we'll meet again to decide what's not happening based on, because we're asking over $1 million. I haven't seen us get $1 million from them, so something's gonna have to give.
And that was going to be my question. Do we have any sense of what the possibilities are?
No, ma'am. We don't until we go down there and present, and we'll go down there on the 30th for that. And again, if there's something in here that you all feel needs to come out in order to make you more comfortable for us to take it down there, then that's something we need to decide this evening as well. Or again, if there's something that you think is missing that needs to be added, you know, of what we need to do in order for us to have a budget for you all to approve on the 22nd, and then from there for us to take it to the Board of Supervisors on the 30th. But no, ma'am, I don't have a feel one way or the other which way it may go.
My belief is, the other board members may agree or not, but my belief is if you don't ask for it, they don't know the need. So if it's presented as these are our needs, and then if they say, no, we're only going to give you this amount, then we can look at what do we need to cut. But if you only present to them less, they never know what your need is.
Well, there's a point there, because by statute, superintendent's supposed to propose a budget of need, not a budget of wants. So these are the needs, you know. We can do a lot bigger if we wanted to do a budget of wants. So it does come down, is that the budget that you guys as a governing body want to present to the BOS? This is our recommendation of our needs. But we all know how it's received down there with the big total.
I think though, these things in red, you just can't tell them. They already think that we're top heavy at central office. So you're really gonna have to tell them why you need something with benefits that's 110,000.
I would like I know we've talked about this director of accountability, but can we do that again?
Well, the one thing that Paige is really lacking is someone to really track the data and keep up with all of the data points. And part of accountability would include the responsibilities of school improvement. When you have schools that are improvement, it takes a lot of work, a lot of tracking, a lot of data. It's also the piece that would monitor equity. Sometimes we think equity is all about race, and that's not so. It's about socioeconomic, it's about opportunity gaps, and making sure someone is really watching that, and also doing state reporting. We'd like to take that off of Mr. Sample's plate so he can dedicate it more to technology, especially now that we're all one-to-one, and he's got his hands full. And this position is in every division except for Paige that I've noticed, and we really need someone dedicated to that work. Right now, there is no one that's able to just, like do the data book I did, or to take it down lower with the school divisions to do the data mining that's needed to be done. It really is a full-time job. So we're taking school accountability, state reporting, school improvement, equity.
And where did the price tag come from? How did you?
So that is the director's scale, the pay scale that we currently have, the tier 1 of directors, and then the full benefit load. That is the full benefits and
not the
health
salary.
insurance. So that's not just the salary, that's the
The same
entire
thing the other
cost.
directors.
Yeah, that's like with that reading specialist, if some teachers see that they think that it would be 81,000, everybody's gonna wanna.
Right, and
Yeah.
that reading specialist, I'm glad you brought that up. That is calculated because we didn't get to discuss it. It was brought up Monday night at that meeting, but I wanted to include it because it was brought up. That is a 12-month, calculated as a 12-month position. Again, that's not decided how that would be, however you all would like to handle that, or they would like to handle that in their hiring process. But this is how I calculated the number. It's a 12-month teacher salary scale with a master's degree with 5 years experience, and then the full benefit load on top of that. That's where that number came from.
So why would it, I'm just curious, why would it be 12 months? Because
I'm not sure.
Vacation days.
And I'll tell you why I picked that one. I went top heavy for the finance part for budget.
Oh, okay.
I'm not sure what
'Cause I
they
was
would
like, are they
choose.
really
And
reading
again,
specialist or like a curriculum supervisor?
right, and see, we didn't discuss that, and I'm not sure, but for
Yeah.
budget
I
purposes,
just
I wanted
asked
to
her
give you
regardless
the.
of price tags, so we'd have something to work on.
Yeah, I agree with you for breeding. It's kind of like with Santa, what you want for Christmas. You don't know what you're gonna get if you
Yeah.
don't ask, but I think you have to very clearly outline why you need it.
Right.
A teacher at 11 month at that same scenario, Dr. Painter, is $75,084 for a reading specialist. Teacher at 10 months, master scale, 5 years experience is $68,950 with the full benefit. I did all three of them. I just put that one
Okay.
down since it was the largest.
It'd probably be more like an 11-month, just in case you're wondering that, because you need to finish up the data and prep before teachers come back. You don't want to walk in when teachers are.
And when talking about the accountability, it might be helpful to say which counties in the
We can look
surrounding
that up.
area
Mhm.
have that so that they know, that happens.
And again, whatever you all do choose to give a consensus on this evening and the book is updated, it will be, so let's say you did choose to add the reading specialist, it will get a narrative in there just like all the other pieces did as well. So the,
Because we need to free Blake up so he can set up the Schoology parent portal. That'd be very helpful.
but it will, Solomon Smith, get a narrative in the book. All of that will become an updated item and added to that with the narrative that goes along with why we need them, and
I
that's
think the more information you can give so that they're not going to understand everything, but, at least they have
Absolutely
an
agree.
idea of what is. That might make it more feasible.
yes.
That might be a good play on it, that you show things that he can't do because
That's
he's
a good
stuck with this master scheduling and all that stuff.
Yeah, all that state reporting is so time consuming.
Trying to give you some props there, Blake.
So, again, if there aren't any more questions, or if there are, we absolutely can address them. But I just need a consensus, yes or no, on, I believe we did a consensus on the items already that were in I guess that's a blue, in a prior meeting, unless anyone is uncomfortable with anything from prior. But then I will need a consensus on whether we're adding or not adding the items in the red.
So why was the PCMS Lexia Power already blue, but then LMS got added?
So when I started this budget process in October, I gave every school a budget template, and Page County Middle School, added that on their request list. And then I believe it was discussed in a meeting, and
We
you all
added it,
felt
yeah.
that it should be added to both. So
we're paying for that this year out of the school improvement grant, and so we won't have funds next year, so they would like to continue. They've been successful.
Patty, just for clarity, should the one line that says increase raise to 5%, should it then in parentheses maybe say something like the additional 3, because we already have
I
2
had,
in there.
yes, I did
Okay.
have 3% there, and then I didn't want to confuse someone with somebody be saying I only had a 3% on this line. That is, there's a 2% already in the budget.
Built in.
Built in the superintendent's recommended budget, so it would go in as an additional 3% to equal our fine.
That's a big point. Yeah.
Yes. So yeah, so that's why it says increase to 5%,
Yeah,
so
right.
it's going to, that's,
Additional 3.
yes.
What's the price tag on the director of accountability? I think something.
$110,027.
That's with benefits.
That's full benefit load and,
It's the, yeah, okay, thanks.
I will say this with the reading specialist, let me just clarify a little bit about that. We do have teachers that are in Title I classrooms that work with children in small groups, full out and things, but we don't have that position filled by people with like the UVA reading specialist certification, like the specialty training. We do have someone in the, 1 or 2 people, I know of one for sure, one I think another one also, that has the certification, but we need that position to free it up to then fill that position that they're doing. So essentially the division is without math specialists and without reading specialists, people who really have the training with the pedagogy necessary to make improvements. Not saying that the folks we have doing the Title I, they're doing a great job, but I will say that when we did a deep dive into our data, you know, the data notebook I prepared for you, the instructional team and I met this week, taking a deep dive. And when you look back over 8 years worth, when the new reading test was implemented, you see a consistent pattern among our elementary schools of not meeting the benchmarks or struggling, what we call flirting with the benchmark. Like they get close and they miss, they get close and miss. They just barely hit it and they fall. Middle school was a little bit stronger and high school was stronger, for sure, if you're going by SOL testing, okay? And of course, that's the metric by which we're measured, right? So there's a consistent pattern of not being successful, of where we need to be strengthened and be more intentional in how we're approaching how we teach reading. Now, with that said, we have Lexia in place and we have OG training going on. Unfortunately, we didn't have a SOL last year to measure our progress to see what the impact is of those tools. Now, we do have the reports from Lexia, and we reported out last year. We saw growth. We saw kids moving up reading levels. So we figured if we have OG and we have Lexia, and then we could have at least maybe a division-wide reading specialist that could give extra help and professional development to our reading teachers, our Title I teachers, and to our English teachers, then I think we could have a bigger impact. Because when you look at the data, guys, we're not making the movement. We need to be moving over 8 years. And writing's the same way until the test, disappeared at the elementary school. But reading and writing should be the flip side of the same coin. Now, math also showed the same pattern. At the elementary level, when you do the deep dive into the data, we aren't showing the growth in math at the elementary schools like we are. Somehow middle is picking up the pieces, and then high school is. I mean, I'm not saying there weren't occasional dips, because there were, but those were due to different reasons that we were discussing. But eventually, we should really look into get a math specialist division-wide as well. But not this year, because we can't double up the price tag here. But maybe, perhaps we could start with reading and have that division-wide. So that's why I support now this being in here, after really looking at that data. If we want to move the needle, we got to be intentional about how we want to approach that. But that's my thoughts. Now what do you guys think?
Well, I was just shocked to learn that there's no reading specialists at any of the schools that are in that role. We have Title I.
Yes, we do have Title I.
And they do a great job. However, we don't have anyone that is certified trained as a specialist in reading to help those students to move along. And there too, also to help our teachers with strategies of how to help the whole class.
Mhm.
I was just astonished.
Right.
And I know if you look at other school divisions where we have none, you're going to see other school divisions that have 8, 10, 12.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's,
Well, I'll have to admit, when I came here, I was surprised by that too, because other divisions I've been in also have them. But they do have 2 instructional coaches. Eric, do you want to speak to as to what the instructional coaches' responsibilities are at the elementary schools?
Providing activities, designing activities, mentorship with new teachers. You know, it really is a coaching, so they're modeling and for those.
Giving feedback?
Giving feedback,
Mhm.
yes. It's really not an evaluation model where they're, you know, that's left to the school administrator.
Correct, as it should be, yeah.
Believe it or not, they do take on some, what I would say, reading specialist duties where they're working with kids because in the absence of those positions, you know, you just put that hat on, so to speak. You try to fill that gap in that role. But their original intent was to be working with teachers.
To grow teachers.
Grow teachers, not necessarily to be working directly with students.
And not specifically in reading, that was to grow teachers, just to be master teachers across all the
Concept.
subjects, right? Mhm.
Yeah, there's really not a plethora of reading specialists anyway, because, I mean, I'm a small school, I have two, I'm lucky.
Yeah, see?
But, because I had one, everybody has one, you're Title I or not. Then when I became Title I, I got another this past summer. And I think when I let it stay there 6 weeks before I interviewed, I might have had 3 applicants.
Oh, wow.
And not everybody even had the reading specialist degree because that means you have to have a master's in that.
Mhm.
So,
It's a really difficult position to come by. We have a tough time with SOQ positions already, so if we end up hiring for a reading specialist, we'll have to really beat the bushes and try to find one that's certified.
Yeah. Well, in the school division that I worked at, what we did to promote having internal people, we paid for their classes. So we put them through that program and we paid for it, but then they had to sign a contract saying that they're going to stay, I think it was 5 years with the school division. So they get their reading specialist degree, but they have to spend 5 years after completion with that district. And that put one at every, 2 at the elementaries, 1 at the middle school, and 1 at the high school.
cha-ching.
But we,
The prohibitive thing in that is the cost of putting them through
we
school.
grew our own because we had teachers already there. Then they became interested in it because they had been teaching for 20 years or so, and they wanted to do that. So we had quite a few that would want to take that opportunity. So they were already vested in the school system. They were already there, and it gave them that great opportunity. And we also did that with the math specialists.
And we did that in my division too, but with grant money, because I don't
We had
know,
grant money.
yeah, I just don't know how Paige is gonna afford that. But that would be a great way to grow our own, if we could start something, or maybe do something with a grant in partnership with JMU or Shenandoah University. But remember, we do have a couple, one for sure, maybe 2, I'm not sure about the other person, but one for sure who does have the reading specialist degree. So even if that person went for the job and did it, you still have to replace her. So either way, you're gonna need a position budgeted to replace her if she moves into that role. Because like we were saying earlier, the cabinet, it's hard enough just to get teachers, let alone a reading specialist, much to what Dr. Painter was saying, the applicants just aren't there.
Or SPED teachers.
Yes, that too.
I think you're going to have the same issue with the 5 counselors.
Yes, we anticipate that as well. At least if we've tried, when we do the SOA report, we don't get hand smacked as much as long as we're advertising and trying, and we haven't budgeted to have them.
Yes. Okay.
Do we still have, or do we still employ a career coach from Lord Fairfax?
Yes, Eric, right? Isn't
Yes,
she
ma'am.
still down there?
Make a contribution. It's not full. LFCC helps us with that cost as well.
Well, okay.
In recent years, we did eliminate tuition assistance from the budget. So the thought of paying for a teacher to go back, we would have to be looking as, that would be another expenditure because we've eliminated all tuition assistance money from the budget.
Yeah, but I think we probably need to look for a grant. I think that's probably the only way you're going to get 4 or 5 reading specialists is if you have a grant. That's the only way I was able to do it.
So what's the board feeling like as far as the blues and the reds on this list? Do we keep it all? Do we go for it, swing for the fences?
Now, Mr. Van White's position would be included in,
It's
already
budgeted.
budgeted.
It's already budgeted,
Okay.
yeah, we have to have that position, yeah.
You might as well keep it all in because they're gonna cut no matter,
Mm-hmm.
you know, that's what we've seen, right, Jackie, and others?
Yeah. You can be empty, probably more to put in.
I just think on the, you know, and I know this has been done in the past, but really hit hard on getting the point across about the state share, the SOQ, and what that doesn't count for. And because sometimes they just see the increase, and that's everybody, and it's not.
Right. Yes,
And even community doesn't always understand that, so
right.
And mention there wasn't a raise last year,
Right.
so
We
that's
did have,
all
right.
important things,
it
right?
needs to
We'll
be
put that in our presentation.
Yeah, I mean-
crystal clear and as many times as you have to say it, just because this is what it won't count for.
Yeah,
Right.
Yeah, and that it's for everyone in the division, not just
what we're
teachers.
asking for, yes.
That's what we're
Not
asking.
just teachers and administrators,
Right.
but
Yeah.
everyone.
Right, right,
And we can list out exactly who it covers.
right, right, yeah, so, I mean,
We'll prepare our PowerPoint for that.
Do we get that too?
Yes, we would like that too. We'll get that. We'll give y'all a copy too. We
No,
get
I mean the
We
raise.
get two across the board. 5%.
Please, what we get is barely enough to buy tissues.
We do appreciate your service though. Thank you.
Well, I'm gonna go back to about the step with the bands that you were talking about.
Uh-huh.
I think at some point, we gotta say, we need a 5-year plan to make that right.
Agreed. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think we should just start this year, in my opinion.
And we can, once we know what monies we're getting and we look at it and go, how are we going to apply that 5%? I was cautionary. I was talking to Patty earlier today. My fear is if we just randomly, because it's an average of 5, right? So if somebody, because you're trying to fix the steps, only gets 2 and somebody else gets 5, they're not going to be feeling, they're going to be feeling some sort of way as to why that happened to them because they don't understand how to make the stepping. So it's going to take a deep dive. I mean, at the end, I'm not saying we don't do that, but I'm just saying we have to be very cautious the way we address it and how we start fixing it. And you're right, Dwayne, we can't do it all at once. It'll spread out over years, but we got to start. We just can't keep ignoring it.
And I would like to start this year personally.
This year, meaning this next week, and we can, because one group on our last 3-year plan we had never got addressed, and that was the mechanics and the maintenance workers. So we definitely need to swing them back in, and I know Patty's been looking at some preliminary numbers. So definitely, I would say we need to catch those guys up because we missed them in the last round, and then we need to move forward as to who's next and what order.
and I want to reassure you that this is something prior to even some of the community comments that have just come up that we had already discussed. And with the lady who is training me, we had talked about starting this summer in anticipation for the next budget season. It's not really something that we can start right now that we feel comfortable doing in March and having it ready for this, obviously this budget when I'm going to get ready to give you guys the final budget in 10 days. It's something that really needs to be comprehensive and thoughtful so that it's done correctly. And as we've talked to, we don't know what other counties are doing with their 5%. So once we know that, we can really look at and get a good comparison. If we do that right now, we also don't know how we're going to compare to our surrounding areas if we jump on it, right now. But it is something I want to reassure you that Lance and I had already talked about starting this in July. So for the upcoming season. But I do want you to be reassured that it is on the
And
radar.
I like that idea, and I'm glad you're thinking this. We've got to do it.
Yeah, it's something that we've waited too long for, and it's been a priority for us. We've been looking very hard at it. Again, we've talked at length about getting a good start on it this year, coming up if we can, and then moving forward.
So you feel good that the 5% helps, and then you can spread more.
It does. We've had some discussions about what we can do to correct some of the problems with the steps by having this raise in there.
I'm just thinking this is the year to do it.
I-
You look at a 5, 3.
Yeah.
It was from 2 to 5. I just think this is the year if you're going to
Yeah.
ask, start doing it.
I definitely think they need the 5%. They've been through a lot. Our
Yep.
staff has. I do want to kind of defend Paige a little bit in the sense that when we were finishing up that 3-year plan when I first got here, then we got hit with the debacle with the insurance and we came up $1 million short. And then COVID hit and we were trying to sit on money. So it isn't like we didn't want to go forward because we've been talking the whole time I've been here about doing a plan. But we had a few financial issues hit us along the way, did we not, Jackie? You remember that with the insurance. And But, so we've always been advocating we need a plan. I think the public needs to know we have a plan, that staff needs to know we have a plan, and prospective teachers need to know we have a plan. And we need a plan where steps make sense, because steps do not equate to years, and the average Joe doesn't know that, and we need to have something that actually represents what it is. Much to what Ms. Meadows brought up in her comments. She's right. It doesn't equate to what it's saying, this, that, and the other, so we do need to make that right.
It also needs to make sense as you move up the steps, the increments that you move up.
Right.
Like I sent you in that
Yes,
email.
the percentage changes, yes.
Yeah, I mean, you can front load it or back end it, however, that you need to incentivize keeping people or attracting people. So, for the first 5 years, it's 2% in each step. And then from 5 to 10, it's 4%. And after 10, it can be 6. But if you want to front load it to get new teachers here to attract, then you do the 6, you do the 4, you do the 2.
Right.
Or however, you do 4,
Yeah.
4. But something has to make sense in looking at that of why you're moving up steps.
Mm-hmm.
And it should always be known that this is the anticipated cost every year
Right.
to
Right.
keep them on step.
Right.
The year that
The
I
cost
went,
of living adjustments.
the year I went to a certain division, they had just put in and passed 22% raise. That's how far behind they were. So when you're not attracting anybody because of your salaries, when you're not getting the best of the best, it's because of your salary. And so for them to be able to attract some of the best, it had to jump. And it was still below all the other neighboring
Right.
divisions.
Just barely getting.
It was just barely below,
Mhm.
but it put us up at almost equal footing.
Okay.
So, and I find as you deep dive into this, you're going to find that you're probably pretty far behind in getting those percentages to match what other school divisions around you are doing.
Lance, what have you seen lately? You were saying we're pretty competitive in a couple of the areas, but not in the other ones.
Yeah, we're close in some places, but again, as the steps move up in other districts, we're not
We're not
moving up.
keeping up.
Yeah,
We're not keeping.
And that's why you're losing
so,
long people at
Right.
10 years,
To go jump to another division.
because then they can make another $10,000 or $15,000 more.
And our administrative scale definitely doesn't have steps. I mean, it has lines there, but nobody moves. They pretty much stay there. And so that needs to be addressed as well.
And that's why this needs to be, it's much more comprehensive than just a quick glance at what we're gonna have to do to fix this. It's
It's a
gonna
complete
take some
study and
time,
Yeah.
a whole salary
Complete study
study
and overhaul.
and some
It'll
time
probably
to
take
get
all
this
next year.
right, so
Yeah.
that it is right, and then we can move forward from there with it being correct. And
And that-
giving our employees what.
as we start a salary study, that's one of the problems we're having, is everybody's is overhauling things at this point. And steps are moving all over the place in different counties. So, we've reached out to some other counties, but they're like, we're changing this all. So we'll just have to wait and see a little bit. But I think we have some idea about the direction we're gonna go. And we can talk to you all more about that when we get there.
Do we agree we want to go for 5% now, though, everyone? Do we swing for that? Okay. And so I guess what I heard earlier, like Rocky said, we're going to swing for all of it at this point. It's a budget of need. We present a budget of need. Okay, all right.
I just need a head nod from everybody so that I have a consensus
Thumbs up. we're all
that I
good
can
now.
we don't have to vote on it, but I do have to have a consensus. Thank you all very much.
What two
So then after that, I've lost my clicker, is just the next step. So the county administrator is supposed to have their proposed budget to present next Tuesday. Side note, that's also when we're gonna go down and present our resolution for our rollover money.
Can
We're all
I ask
for
a
that.
question there? I'm sorry, Patty. Did Amity already ask us for our preliminary budget so she knows what number to plug in to her budget?
She asked, and I had told her that all of our information was available on the web and all of that.
Okay, because I just
She
want her to
has
get this updated number, so when she
I
presents
can,
her
I
budget,
can,
if you don't
I'll
mind.
share everything with her
Yeah,
tomorrow.
just want to make sure she includes our new number.
Yes.
Okay.
And then we have our regular meeting on the 22nd, which is where we'll do the final budget approval there, or not final, but budget approval. And then we will go down on the 30th to the Board of Supervisors work session and present our budget to them as well. And then you have some things after that with just our regular meeting, some tax rates adopted by the BOS, We do have another work session not until May. Hopefully we'll have something back from the BOS there when they adopt theirs on May the 4th. And
Ms.
then,
Speakrest?
yes, sir.
Interrupt you a second. For the BOS work session on the 30th
Yes,
and
sir.
the presentation, how's it gonna work with the number of people in the room? Have they figured that part?
I did ask about that, and she said that it is limited. If everyone did want to come and there was overflow, people may have to wait out in the hallway. That's the only response that I
But you're all
have.
good for the presenter?
Yes.
Yes,
That's
we
the
can-
yes, yes. So we are good. We have 4 seats
Okay.
also for for Tuesday to do our other thing. But yes, so we are good as far as that goes. But
Yes, because on this Tuesday, we're going to do the resolution.
And to who, do you need any of the board to go on Tuesday?
Not for this Tuesday, but some of you should be there for the school board budget presentation.
That's on the 30th.
Yes, on the 30th.
I think they're still reworking some of their seating as well.
Okay.
But she did say if you were invited, but if there's overflow, we may have to wait in the hall.
Okay.
But that's kind of our rest of our timeline there. And again, if we're good, I'll work on getting all of this updated and bringing to you guys on the 22nd. The budget with all of these items added in, rerun our charts, have some updated book information for you all, and we can go through. Sounds good.
And we'll be sharing this book with the board of supervisors, and I think you all will have to agree this is
Once you all
way better
decide,
than what we've presented in the past.
once you all decide on the 22nd, we'll have copies and everything ready for them as well when we go down there on the 30th. But if that's it, that's all that I have for you all.
I make a motion that we adjourn.
I'll second.
Mr. Taylor?
Yes.
Barbara Taylor? Yes. Mr. Douglas?
Yes.
Mr. Langford?
Yes.
Mr. Sullivan? Yes.
Yes. Meeting adjourned.